Hey, good Tuesday afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Midday Market Update. It is 4/27/21, Kaylee.
27.
Yeah. So how are you today?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing, Michael Vincent?
I am doing fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. This is our
beautiful spring day
it
in
is
the heart
a
of Freight
gorgeous
Alley,
spring
as you
day,
like
right?
to say.
It's going to be like 80 today.
No, it's so great.
Really
It's so
nice.
great. I'm looking forward to going and walking my dog after this and just like enjoying the sunshine.
Nick Austin's finally got those weather dials dialed in. I've been begging him for.
I don't know. It depends on where you're at, and I'm sure he's going to tell us a little bit more about that today. But there could be some stormy weather coming to the plains.
That was nice. Can you do that again?
Thanks. No, I can't.
Okay.
I don't sing in public. That was my one time.
That was it. That was one shot. You're going to have to replay that, or you can go to FreightWaves.com and watch it again.
You're not wrong.
Right.
Hey, you can watch it live on LinkedIn. You can hit that replay button on LinkedIn over and over again. And we will be reading your comments on LinkedIn because we are live and interactive on our bi-weekly show here.
And we absolutely are. We've got a great show today as well. So we've got Chris Richter, who's founder CEO of FloorFound, talking about returns and managing those during this e-commerce or for our e-commerce, I should say, the exploding e-commerce during COVID that is happening and moving forward. And then Alan Adler will be on talking about the transition to electric vehicles as part of what we'll be talking about there, but AV as well, but looking at alternative fuels and how they'll bridge that gap into electricity. So
pretty interesting. Reverse logistics has a really, really big role in environmental impacts, especially with e-commerce, and it's been a pretty hot topic of conversation for us here on multiple different avenues.
Yeah, it really has. It'll be interesting to talk about that because you mostly think about it as just the logistics of it and how difficult it is, but you don't think about the environmental impact that is there, and it's huge. Firsthand accounts of that as well, from my experience through this last year. But hey, first off, we have the always entertaining and in his own Rococo style, Andrew Cox with headlines. Andrew, what's going on today?
Hi, Mike. Good morning. UPS is the first story of the day. They absolutely blew away their Q1 expectations, racking in earnings per share of $5.47 when consensus estimates were just $1.63. About half of that bottom line handle did come from a $2.4 billion net benefit from favorable adjustments to its pension costs from a COVID-19 relief legislation that was signed into law last month. But after accounting for the pension gain, EPS came in at $2.77 per share. That exceeds a remarkable Q4 that UPS posted just last year, where they posted $2.66 per share. And parcel providers typically have their best quarter in the Q4 of each year, where holiday shipping really starts to heat up. But UPS just beat one of their best Q4s of all time in Q1. Revenue grew nearly 30% to almost $23 billion as all three product lines grew in demand. Total operating profits rose 158% to $2.8 billion. That is the most that UPS has ever earned in a single quarter. And it's also the fourth consecutive big beat on a quarterly earnings announcement for the company. And the stock is absolutely flying. It's up more than 10% today. And I think analysts and stockholders and investors are really starting to realize that UPS is not just a recovery play, but also a reopening play. Shipping is going to be a post-COVID winner, and UPS will be one of those big winners. Mike?
Yeah, it's really interesting to see these effects here, right? Like you said, and what is reported here, Q4, the holiday season is it, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the big boom, the grand hoorah. First quarter is typically let's get through this and either hit even or lose as little money as possible and not lose as any ground moving into the next year. But now it's killing it. I mean, is this the new thing here, Andrew? Do you see like Q2 beating Q1? I mean, we look at orders of trucks and capacity, and it's like every month seems to beat the previous, and maritime as well. Are we looking at something crazy like that as well?
Well, I would caution with that, although consumer demand has remained extremely strong in Q2, April and May have been great. April has been an amazing month so far. I will say that we've seen a lot of reopening surge. We've seen people spending more at restaurants. We've seen people spending more on entertainment services when they're available. People are starting to revert some of those spending back to services, and some of the other spending is being reverted back to in-store operations. So doing less online, more in-store. So while consumer demand has stayed really strong, it wouldn't surprise me if they do see some moderation here in Q2 as people start going back to stores and start going back to restaurants and such.
And then that third stimulus, it hit us right at the tail end. So, Andrew, how much of that big boom was can you really attribute to that first stimulus? Obviously, that second one, we didn't really see those hard-hitting effects, but that first one really did.
Yeah, both stimuli provided pretty strong boost to consumer spending. The second one provided an even bigger boost simply because it was a bigger check that we received. However, according to Bank of America, the marginal propensity to consume this third stimulus has actually been lower than the previous two, which was against my original thoughts when I saw that big spending boom, as you said, right there at the end of March when we got that third stimulus. But I mean, the thing is that the consumers are really flush with money. They have the savings rate is extremely high. Consumers are doing very well. They're keeping the economy going. I think in the latest week of data, consumer spending was up about 12% over 2019, which is extremely strong, down from about 25% a few weeks ago. So we're coming back down to earth, but again, remains extremely strong.
Yeah, it's one of those. UPS is in one of those positions where more volume is good because you're already on that route and it creates that volume. It's additional pay for the same routes and the same system, so that volume is good. You get past that, you start adding trucks, et cetera. It becomes difficult, but it seems like they've figured out their capacity and things are running really well.
Forget Dogecoin.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Forget Dogecoin. We're taking UPS to the moon. So what about the rest of trucking here? It's got to be good for everybody, right, Andrew?
There are a lot of good signs right now. A lot of signs are pointing to a record year for motor carriers. The winter weather that we felt in February definitely did have an adverse effect on freight markets, but the further away we get from that month of February, the more it seems like a very minor speed bump on the way to a big year. Consumer demand, again, as I just said, remains strong. Bank of America said spending is up. Total card spending is up 12% over 2019 in the latest week of data. We also have a huge need to rebuild inventories. The inventory to sales ratio did tick up in February, but off of an all-time high or an all-time low in January, so plenty of restocking to do. And freight flows are expected to remain extremely high into the country. I spoke with Daniel Hackett this morning, actually, of Hackett Associates. He and his team put together the Global Port Tracker that's published in tandem with the National Retail Federation each month, and he said that they're actually increasing their expectations for the next 3 months. And those expectations were already at record high volumes for the month of May, June, and July, and he's going to be raising those expectations. On the industrial side, the economy is inflecting higher. The ISM PMI is at a 3-decade high at 64.7. So in all, there are volumes bursting from many different regions of the country and many sectors of the economy. And there's just very little capacity relief ahead. We haven't seen those big order numbers. We haven't seen the deliveries of new trucks come in. The bottlenecks at the driver training schools remain. The drug and alcohol clearinghouse, there are plenty of catalysts to keep drivers off the road and plenty of catalysts to keep freight on the road.
Yeah, I imagine that there are, and you start looking. We're looking towards, maybe those people that were in those industries that were heavily hit by COVID, the service industries. Maybe some of those would move into the driver categories, but those are starting to reopen now as well. And some of those that are traditionally kind of in transportation, but not in truck movement, people movement, et cetera. Right? There's transportation of human beings as well, but that's going to start opening as well. So you start drawing down on that capacity. Chips, you got the salsa trucks out there, all truck, no chips.
All right, we've got our next headline talking about some news with Lyft in Toyota.
Yes, so a subsidiary of Toyota, Woven Planet Holdings, has agreed to acquire Level 5, which is one of the autonomous divisions of ride-sharing platform Lyft, for $550 million. The sale price includes $200 million in cash today and $350 million spread out in additional cash payments over the next 5 years. The acquisition is subject to regulatory approval and is expected to close sometime in Q3. And this business, Level 5, it's a sister business to Lyft Autonomous, which will remain a part of Lyft. Toyota gains over 300 engineers and data scientists in this deal, so a big brain drain from Lyft. But Lyft's open platform team, which focuses on the deployment and scaling of third-party self-driving technology on the Lyft network, that will become the new Lyft Autonomous team. Kaylee?
I don't really know if I would be a fan of getting into a Lyft and then there not being anybody there. As far as like the autonomy train goes, I'm not quite sure I'm ready. Not a person driving me in my Lyft. I want that person there.
Yeah, well, currently Lyft has made 100,000 autonomous vehicle drives or drop-offs in the last, I think, 3 or 4 years. All of them have been done with a person in the car. So if you were to be in San Francisco, I think they also do it in Dallas, you would get to test out some of these, but you still have a person behind the wheel. We're still quite a ways away from that Level 4 or Level 5 where you could have the driver out of the car. There's some big progress that we think is on the horizon here from other autonomous players. I know Tesla they have obviously the biggest ambitions. They say that they're going to make a cross-country autonomous trip with no interventions and no driver sometime later this year, but a lot of things to wait on there. We're not sure if they can make it. They've had a lot of pushbacks on that project.
Yeah, and Too Simple is looking at it as well. Not human movement, but movement of freight is going driver out by the end of this year, but unrestricted test tracks, right? Or test routes where it'll be restricted. I think totally driver out, and I agree with you, Kaylee. It'd be kind of freaky just getting in my own car. That would be a total autonomous, getting into one that's owned by somebody else and not knowing, who's out there controlling it. Maybe somebody with a joystick or something like that. It'd be a little bit freaky. So yeah, that's a little bit change. But let's move on. Let's talk about Target and its parcel providers. What's going on there, Andrew?
Sure, Mike. This was actually an excerpt from my point of sale from last week. I wrote about how the best-in-class retailers, the Targets, Walmarts, and Amazon of the world, are aggressively pursuing logistical control over their products while trying to avoid a patchwork response to final mile delivery. And they're all in an arms race to deliver goods faster and faster to consumers. So in its hometown of Minneapolis, Target is testing a new way to deliver goods. Target has done a remarkable job of focusing on its stores. That's what it felt was its one true advantage over Amazon. And in doing so, it's been able to achieve near margin parity between in-store sales and same-day pickup sales, which is something that not many retailers, if any, can say. But Target's online business has exploded over the past year. Digital sales were up 150% in the most recent quarter at the end of Q4, and BOPIS curbside sales were up even higher. So online orders are piling up in the back room of Target's stores. And so Target is testing out a new model where it opened up a sortation center in the fall last year just outside of Twin Cities. So the method is that the orders are still fulfilled by stores. They're picked and packed by Target employees and then put in the back room. But rather for them being waited to be picked up either by same day or another service, they are then sent to the sortation center. So Target trucks pick up from the 20 Twin Cities Target locations, send them to the sortation center where they are then batched or by neighborhood, by zip code, and they can be delivered by parcel providers, or what Target is testing out now is having its proprietary delivery fleet delivering those goods from the sortation center. So that delivery fleet is Shipt. They acquired that back in 2017. And since then, Shipt has been delivering bagged goods and household essentials from Target stores. But now it will be testing out to be delivering box e-commerce orders from sortation center. So from a customer perspective, it doesn't feel much different than a typical parcel drop-off, but COO John Mulligan said that it will give the company more control over the customer experience, and he believes that it will make e-commerce orders more profitable. And as of today, I gotta say, I think Target is the only retailer in a position to add fulfillment steps to make e-commerce more profitable. According to Mulligan, orders fulfilled by BOPIS and curbside are, listen to these numbers because they are astounding, are 90% cheaper than having the product shipped from a fulfillment center. And he said shipping a package from the store, so shipped from store, is 40% cheaper than shipping it from a fulfillment center. That is advantaged economics that no other retailer is dealing with right now. So if any retailer can pull this kind of complex machine off, it's Target. But even with them, I'll need some more convincing. There is a lot of experimenting to do, but that's exactly what any retailer that wants to survive post-COVID should be doing. Mike?
Yeah, Andrew, I was going to ask you that question, your opinion on this, because you're just saying, and I was waiting for you to say BOPIS. I love that we've created BOPIS. So curbside is 90% cheaper than the fulfillment, and 40% cheaper is the pickup or shipping packages from that store. So this fulfillment center is expensive. And when you hear and you explain it, if you're in logistics, you think, wow, that's crazy going from all these stores into this, and you're adding this middle thing. You want to reduce handling stuff, right? And they're adding it into this. So it begs the question of how long until they just have these fulfillment centers and the stores are really just they're fronts to walk in, and you have these fulfillment centers that already have these. I mean, I guess they're using these fulfillment centers because I might go online and buy a couple items from a store that they're not all at that store. They may have it from some other one, and they can fulfill my order that way to have them merge at this. There's really merge shipping, right, Andrew?
Kinda. It's like it's not dissimilar to all of the delivery centers that Amazon has popped up all over the place, often in makeshift parking lots and such, where they just have Amazon Flex drivers come and pick up boxed e-commerce orders to deliver from there. It's not unlike that, and I will say that I think it's going to be a while before you see a Target dark store. Amazon is already operating a dark store in New York. That is the type of store that is no storefront. It is just there for e-commerce deliveries. I think it'll be a while. Target is getting better, and they are actually planning a few of larger micro-fulfillment centers kind of built onto the back of Target stores to make better use of the space. But that's going to be a while. Those are expensive projects to build out. It will take some time. And Target has been so focused on its stores. The only reason that they are able to do this is because they've been so focused on the unit economics at their stores. They believe that it is just cheaper for them to send it to the store and then to a sortation center than from sending it from a fulfillment center to door. So, and in that process is trying to take advantage and take back control over some of the logistics of it, having their ship drivers deliver it rather than paying UPS and FedEx, who have been surcharging for about 9 months now. One of the reasons that UPS posted such an incredible quarter.
There you go. If you don't want to pay the extras to outsource it, make it on your proprietary business. Smart.
It is. It seems like it would. And thank you very much for that, Andrew. And everybody, hey, check out the POS. It comes out Monday nights.
Yeah.
Right?
So point of sale newsletters out Mondays, and then point of sale the show airs on Wednesdays. And he always has lots of good information. And he actually had 2 point of sale episodes that aired last week. That second one was a live episode and talking a little bit about the green behind beauty brands. And a lot of people are really into the whole idea of sustainable beauty as far as like the ingredients that go into their products.
Oh, sure.
But there's a brand, it's Tatcha, I think is how you pronounce it. They're the ones that are actually looking at how their shipping and their logistics are having an impact on environmental processes. So that's a really good episode. If you didn't catch that, you can find it on FreightWaves.com. And that's where you also go to sign up for that point of sale newsletter. Right
on. And talking about sustainable beauty, let's go to Nick Austin and hear what's going on in the weather.
You're too kind. You're going to make me blush over here. Come on.
I mean, nice to have you back, Nick.
That's an introduction. It's great to be back. You know, I enjoy my time off, but it's great to be back with you guys. And, you know, it's springtime, so the further and further you get into spring, of course, the more we talk about possible like flooding rains and severe storms, as opposed to a ton of snowfall or widespread cold snaps. And that's exactly the case for the next few days. We're going to see many areas of heavy rain and some flash flooding possible anywhere from the plains into the southeast and the northeast for drivers out there. And we're also still have areas of the country that are extremely dry too, but we'll talk about that later in the show. But let's go right to Sonar Critical Events. We have the radar up for you. There's not a lot to see. We're getting a lot of ground clutter from the radar site. So a lot of what you see, especially across the south, is not actually rain that's hitting the ground. But we do have some rain showers across parts of the upper Midwest, some of the northern plains, and a few spots up there in the northeast. But no major storms out there right now, even a few areas out west where they're seeing some wet snow. But we're going to focus on the chance for some of that flooding rain, and where we're going to see that heavy flooding rain as well as some severe storms over the next few days. So this is basically through the rest of the work week. So let's take a look at the forecast as far as rainfall for the next few days. We'll take it the next 5 days. How about that? And check that out. So basically through the weekend, although the bulk of that is going to be over the next 2 to 3 days. And where you see the red on the radar on the this particular model's forecast at least, but I've compared it to others, and they're all pretty consistent across parts of the southern plains, Texas to Oklahoma, some parts of the Mississippi and Ohio River Valley too, where you see those reds on there. We could see 4 to 5, maybe even 6 inches of total rainfall over the next, 2 to 4 days. So there's going to be some areas of flash flooding. It's not going to be widespread flooding, but localized areas of flash flooding. So truckers may run into some ramp and especially secondary road closures here and there once they get off the main interstates and the real big highways out there, primarily across the plains, parts of the upper Midwest for the next couple days. Later in the week is when we could see some of that heavy rain in parts of the southeast and up into the Ohio River Valley and some areas of the northeast as well. You know, sometimes that rain is just going to be torrential, blinding rainfall. They're going to have to, you know, pull over probably from time to time, where the rain may end up stopping them in their tracks. But I also want to take a look at where we could see severe thunderstorms. So not only the threat for heavy rain, but for the rest of today, we could see intense thunderstorm winds, maybe 60 miles an hour or greater in some areas here from Texas, including Dallas up to Oklahoma City. maybe near Wichita as well, up into parts of Nebraska, possibly in eastern Colorado. And then the focus for that, maybe even some areas of hail and some isolated tornadoes. And then it's mostly across central and eastern Texas, up into Oklahoma for tomorrow. So not only having to deal with the threat for the heavy rain, but also the severe storms, which we would expect this time of the year across the plains and maybe even in the southeast, of course. It's prime time of the year for it, March, April, and May.
Nick, for those folks that are down here in the southeast, today marks the 10-year anniversary of that April 27th, 2011 super tornado outbreak.
Is that today?
That was today, 10 years ago. And if you're in the southeast, if you're from this area, you're typically pretty uneasy when it comes to severe weather. Are we seeing anything like that in the forecast? Can you put anybody's minds at ease coming up for the next few days at least?
It looks like in the southeast, not really a big threat for severe thunderstorms. There may be some areas of heavy rain, a few isolated severe storms, but I mean, nothing like the threat and what happened 10 years ago, that's for sure. So, and you know, the best way for drivers and everybody else out there to just be prepared for severe storms is to have ways to get those severe weather warnings and those messages. The best way is through a NOAA weather radio. You know that very well. And you know, other backup ways are good as far as phone apps and things like that. But the thing about the weather radios is that they usually have battery backups. You can put batteries in there so that if the power goes out, you will still get those messages. Because if the power goes out, you won't be able to use your computer once it runs out of juice. You won't be able to watch TV and local meteorologists. So that weather radio will still get you the messages even if there's no electricity.
There we go.
I just called my good friend Nick Austin. He lets me know what's going down.
That's what it's like when you have a personal meteorologist on
My
speed
personal
dial.
meteorologist. I asked
I'm
him,
a little
can I
offended
grill
you don't
out this
call me
weekend?
first.
Can I not grill out this weekend? What should I throw on the
A
barbecue?
little
He lets
offense
me
that you
know.
don't call me first, but that's okay.
Well, I didn't know you were a
okay.
meteorologist till recently, so I will give you a ring. Thank you so much, Nick. Yeah, that tornado outbreak that occurred here. I mean, from the very that morning, you could tell there was something wrong.
Yep.
You just felt it in the atmosphere here. It was so different than any other day I've ever felt living in the Southeast.
One of the things that made me
amazing.
want to become a meteorologist was that day.
Is that right?
Yep.
It was your inspiration? Well, there you go.
Just one. Just one.
Very cool.
You know who's got some inspirational information?
Who?
Zach Strickland.
All right. Hey, all right, Zach. Let's find out what's going on in the freight market with the Sultan of Sonar, Zach Strickland.
Yeah, so I remember, you and I remember that day very well. Several years ago, we were all kind of looking up at the sky. Everything was green. It just had a different eerie feel about it. So yeah, definitely a big, we can still see a lot of that damage here today.
Oh yeah.
Which is crazy. But no damage in the freight market right now. Not a lot of movement week over week. We've seen our outbound tender rejection index continue to kind of stall out and hover around this 26%. 25% thing, and I've got the reefer and vans separated here so you can see that produce season really not having a notable impact with reefer tender rejection rates hovering right around 44%, which is actually relatively low compared to where it's been since that big winter weather outbreak that we had back in the middle of February. So reefer rejection rates, reefer capacity is loosening slightly, not significantly, but slightly off of those all-time highs of around 50% that we saw just over a month ago. So reefer capacity loosening a little bit, van capacity nearly unchanged. This has been the pattern since the start of the month, really. Not a lot of fluctuation, at least in aggregate. We have to look a little bit downstream to see any kind of fluctuations, but we need to look at the demand side of things. So is this kind of a supply side or a demand side event that's creating these, this environment that we're in? And to do that, you look at the outbound tender volume index, which is going to be, again, showing that it's relatively stable. We're not seeing a lot of significant drops or changes here, but it's as elevated as it's ever been, just about. We had that plummet there at the beginning of April, after Good Friday and Easter kind of softened things slightly there. But then it went almost right back up to where it was before, and we're still well above where we were in February and January. So demand side still being relatively strong, and it's keeping continued pressure on the freight market and keeping those rejection rates of over 25%, which, as you know, Mike Vincent, is
a lot.
Nothing. Yeah, this is not, it's hard to say the term loosen when you're talking about 1 out of every 4 loads on the contracted side getting rejected right now.
No, we've stabilized at a very tight market.
Yeah.
Which
Right.
which would you rather have? Would you have stability at this really high level, or would you rather have that volatility?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your perspective.
Depends on your perspective.
Yeah,
It
honestly.
absolutely does.
Yeah, looking at the market itself, I mean, I think, any kind of stability over time, as long as you know to expect 1 out of every 4 loads getting rejected, you can account for that. So I think if I were a shipper, depending on the amount of volatility, mind you, if we're talking about going up to 50% and down to 1% every other week, I think that would be too chaotic to manage. But if you're talking about a consistent 1 out of every 4 loads not getting covered, I can come up with contingency plans for that. So I think, depending on the level of chaos, I would rather have a little bit more stability.
Yeah, it depends on how well prepared you are, right? I mean, if you're trying to go through the day, sticking your finger up in the air and wetting it and figuring out where pricing is going to be and capacity is going to be, you want stability, right? If you're prepared and you got data and you got the analytics to be able to do it, I know how to use Sonar. I'm okay with some. In fact, I can actually succeed better in chaotic times a little bit.
There you go.
Yeah, and we
Dare I
see
say.
this. We see this reflected in the spot rates.
Yeah.
We see the longer a spot or the rejection rates stay at a level, spot rates tend to start sliding back down. So it does get reflected into pricing as well. So when you see these stable patterns start to emerge, everybody starts to adapt to it.
Excellent stuff. Thank you so much, Zach, for that update, and we'll see you on Thursdays, and we'll start seeing him regular as we have a new show.
Yep.
BAMF.
Yeah.
Benchmark, Analyze, Monitor, and Forecast will be coming out. I think our first show is, the 10th?
The 10th,
Is
Monday, May 10th.
Monday the 10th at 2 o'clock. It'll be me, Zach, and Kyle Lintner will be hosting that show, taking you through what has happened in trucking and what we see happening in the next week. So
So if you can't get enough of his face or of
And
Zach
who can?
Strickland's incredible insights, tune into that Mondays at 2 o'clock.
Exactly. So we got to check out what's going on in the economy. We have our own very optimistic, believes anything that he reads. Anthony Smith, who is with us, I believe he's ready for us. Anthony.
Hello. So yeah, it's been some time since we spoke about jobless claims. I know we usually go over every single week.
Yeah.
We had a lovely event last week with the net zero carbon event, so be sure to check that out if you haven't already. But we had initial jobless claims, which came down to another pandemic low. And this is some really good news, what we see, because this is showing that there's some sustainable downward movement with the initial jobless claims market, and that the labor market is indeed recovering at a decent clip. There's still a long way to go. It was right around 547,000 individuals that claimed for initial jobless claims benefits. This is still very much elevated compared to where we were pre-pandemic, hovering around that 200,000 mark. So still very much up there, but this is some substantial downward movement that's happening on a consistent basis, as opposed to that hovering around 700 to 800,000 that we saw all throughout the latter half of last year and earlier this year.
Yeah, so you mentioned a sustainable or a sustained downward trend. I would suspect you're looking for that in jobless claims. I would imagine you're looking for that to continue as well. Are you optimistic with that? I mean, I see, like, I think I read the other day, New York City's like looking at restricting or taking off the restrictions from like the entertainment district,
Yeah.
like Broadway, et cetera. Is that going to flourish throughout the country and see those jobless claims even keep going down even further?
Definitely. I think when we look at what's happening throughout the country, I think we all knew it was going to be a piece-by-piece approach. Of course, Florida has likely been one of the front runners on reopening, as well as Texas. And so when you look at these states opening up, a lot of other states are kind of following suit. And as you mentioned, we see other big players like New York, some parts of California, starting to reopen. It's going to only increase these, add some relief to the employment or the labor market, especially for those areas that have been hit really hard, especially restaurants and services and things like that, hospitality. We're looking at those areas. So definitely going to be a bright spot potentially. So I am optimistic as we see more aggressive vaccine efforts throughout the economy and throughout the country. So there is some good news here. Still a long way to go, but I think we're on the right direction. So we can dial down the skeptical Anthony for now. But we do have other news as well when we look at durable good new orders and capital good orders that just came out. So we are seeing some momentum there. The latest number from those durable good orders show that overall orders increased by 0.5%. Might not seem like a lot, but this is 10 out of the last 11 months that we've seen an increase for those durable good orders. And on the non-defense capital good orders, looking at those investments that businesses are making, we saw an increase of 4.7%. So momentum is happening on manufacturing, despite the thing I am suspicious about, and those are manufacturing prices.
Yeah. Oh, and we had to find something he was suspicious about.
There's
right?
always something, right?
If there's more than one topic, one of them he's going to be suspicious about. Yeah, I see that. So, Anthony, when you see New York City start to talk about easing restrictions, and understandably very conservative on keeping restrictions, right? I mean, we saw what happened, right? We all lived through that. It's got to give you some positive that's moving on.
A little bit of hope.
Yeah, but I don't know if you've been to a Home Depot or Lowe's or anywhere lately and seen the price of lumber, but it's like just below gold bullion.
Wow.
As far as its expense, I mean, it's really high. Do you see that starting to restrict any of the economy, or is it just gonna it's just bust and everything is going forward? Do you think inflation in certain sectors like that are going to have any effect on that near term, or you think that's a flash that's going to kind of ease out?
I definitely think so that's one of the big areas of the skepticism around manufacturing is those lack of commodities across the board. And just as you mentioned, lumber has been one that's really been hot as of really since last year, where we saw that a lot of factories stop their actual production. They were anticipating that there's going to be a lack of demand for these lumber products. But despite that, the demand went through the roof. So it was really this mismatch of demand versus the actual supply. And so we've been behind for quite some time now, and we're really seeing that ramp up to these all-time highs with these lumber prices. I do expect, so as we are seeing these factories ramp up production once more, getting back to where we should be, that tightness within the lumber market is going to remain. And I see that kind of lasting all the way in through the mid part of 2021 and really kind of starting to ease towards the latter half of the year as we kind of get into the fourth quarter. But we are still going to see some generally elevated, historically elevated lumber prices as we move throughout the year of 2021. But I think that's going to keep prices for homes propped up. If there aren't any kind of mass evictions, of course, that's a whole nother conversation and talking point. But definitely there's going to be an area to watch, and it's going to be an area that keeps prices up. We might see those prices start to decline in the rate of ascension. Kind of a complicated statement there, but I think there is some ease in sight towards the end of 2021.
Right.
We can talk about those eviction moratoriums on Thursday, but if you can't get enough of Anthony's face and you want to see him with Zach, catch him on Freightnomics. That's tomorrow, Wednesdays at 2 o'clock. Anthony, thank you so much for providing us your insight and your skepticism as always.
Thank you, Anthony. Yeah, really, really interesting what's going on. And and when you talk to Anthony or when you think things through, you run into this. Yeah, but there's always what's going to happen if this occurs, and with those evictions, moratoriums, what is going to happen there? It's interesting. We'll wait and see. Hopefully, we can smooth through this.
Yep.
We got our first guest coming on. It's Chris Richter, who's CEO and founder of FloorFound, which I'll let him tell you what FloorFound is. I think it's incredibly interesting. We had him on last year, and it's a really interesting space in returns. It's really booming through e-commerce. So let's welcome Chris to the show. Chris, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Greetings from Austin, Texas.
Awesome.
Where I think we're right in the center of the weather patterns you all were talking about.
Yes, yep. Right in that risk of severe weather. So, Chris, thank you so much for being with us today. Like Michael was saying, give us a little bit of info about yourself and about FloorFound.
Sure. So I'm an entrepreneur based in Austin. I've been in the technology space in Austin, Texas for about 25 years. I spent the last 6 years prior to starting this company as the head of revenue for a company called Convey that you all may be familiar with, that was focused on helping retailers be proactive about managing their last mile deliveries and get ahead of the delivery failures before they happen, using data science to do that. So that was really my exposure to the massive problem that oversized returns represents. And at our company, I think what we're all really aligned around is this vision that we have of helping to save the planet by extending the lifespan of retail products, and particularly focused on oversized, which is a major source of emission pollution and landfill pollution.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as we talked about before, not only oversized returns something that's it's a lot easier to return a coffee mug or something like that, right? And it was very difficult. But then you had COVID-19, everybody staying home, and then the fight to stay alive as these companies who are selling furniture, et cetera. And people wanted this furniture because they had this money, right? We all saw everything explode. That just exacerbated the problem, did it not, Chris?
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you look at the data is pretty startling. So last year, e-commerce returns was responsible for about 15 million tons of carbon emission pollution and about 4 billion pounds of landfill pollution. And I think if you look at the oversized category, that represents about 9.5 million tons of landfill pollution every year, or a third of the content of landfills. And so it's an urgent problem, and it's been exacerbated by the movement to online that the pandemic accelerated. So, one of the challenges is, if you look at furniture, which is a segment that we're heavily focused on in particular, the 30% of all furniture purchases now happen online. Just to put that in perspective, it was about 10% prior to COVID.
Wow.
And the challenge is that, of course, consumers want free returns, and 92% of consumers say that a better return experience, which means free and fast, will lead to them buying more. And of course, return rates increase when you shift the volume online. Just to put it in perspective, overall return rates across every category are about 8% in the offline world and about 30% online. Specifically in furniture, it's about 11 or 12% return rate. We estimate that's about 40 million pieces of furniture in the next 3 years alone. And, our estimation is at least 80% of that will likely end up as landfill pollution.
So let's talk a little bit about those oversized returns, because there's obviously a massive difference between ordering something on Amazon and putting it back in its little package and dropping it off at your UPS instead of having to recall your delivery drivers and have them pack a piece of furniture back up. What are you guys suggesting to mitigate those impacts?
So I think first and foremost, this had to make sense from an economic perspective to these businesses that are impacted, right? The direct-to-consumer furniture brands or the omni-channel retailers that are selling big and bulky items like furniture or fitness or otherwise. Unfortunately, when you're faced with the daunting task of having to send a two-person freight truck out to a consumer's home to pick up an item that's a loose piece of furniture or a loose piece of fitness equipment, and then to haul that piece that might be a 200-pound item, from California to New York, that's a huge challenge. Both economically and, again, environmentally. And so really our mission was a couple of things. First of all, we knew that we needed to focus on local economies with the return problem and consolidation. So really the first thing that we did was we put a nationwide network in place. We estimate that over the next year, 90% of the returns that FloorFound processes and handles will only go 25 to 50 miles to a return processing center versus 1,200 miles across the country. So that's a major impact, both in terms of economically for these brands based on the length of haul, but then also environmentally. So that was number one. And then number two, the big challenge is you have to have a process for inspecting and grading these items as they come back in. And I think the really exciting fact for us is that, and a surprise for me, frankly, from the point we started the company, is that 90% of these returns are in resellable condition. And we find that almost 100% of these items, when they're marketed via these private marketplaces, resale marketplaces with our customers, are sold and ultimately sold at a discount of around 30%. And so it's actually great business for the retailers to enter the resale business.
Yeah, let's talk about that, Chris. So you just in a partnership with, is it Floyd's Furniture? For opening up a secondhand market. Can you talk about that a little bit and how that impacts that the environment as well? Because it's interesting to me that it's not just returns and then the carbon emissions or carbon footprint, but a lot of those things, they have no way to really resell them. It's cheaper to just toss them in a landfill, right?
it's absolutely true. So Floyd announced on Earth Day a couple of things. Number one, they announced their what they call their full cycle program, which is their circular program. It's a amazing brand. They're based in Detroit, direct to consumer furniture brand. Their ethos from day one has been to build products that are designed for life with great quality materials that are environmentally friendly. So products that will last a lifetime. But unfortunately, again, they were facing this daunting challenge of, do we bring all of these returns back to Detroit from California or other parts of the country? And it was just really difficult for them. And so they launched a private label resale marketplace under the Full Cycle brand that you can access on the Floyd Home website. And I think what's really exciting is, and this is why you see brands like Lululemon and Nike and Patagonia and REI and all these other brands entering the resale spaces, because it's big business, right? So not only are we helping the environment, but there's big opportunity here. So what we've seen with Floyd is that 75% of the customers that engage with and ultimately buy a resale product are brand new customers to that brand. So they're tapping into this new segment of value-driven consumers that want to do good and also get a good deal, frankly. And then secondly, I think the more exciting piece is this is a real customer acquisition engine for the brand and a real loyalty builder for the brand. 20% of those shoppers come back within a month and buy a full price item from the brand. So there's a clear indication that, not only is this good for the environment, but in fact, shoppers really want to support brands that are leaning in on sustainability.
That's the perfect explanation of this. I'm definitely a person who's like, if I can get it one, cheaper, two, secondhand, like I'm a thrift store shopper, right?
Yeah.
Like I bought a $75 couch from Habitat for Humanity instead of going and buying a new couch. And it's like, if you can find that little niche between the product quality is still there, we've got product preservation, but we're also reusing the item and saving the environment at the same time at a discounted price. That's like the ideal situation.
Oh, it is. It's perfect.
A friend of ours in the industry uses a term called accidental activist. But the idea is if you create a win-win proposition where the brand is winning, the consumer is getting a great deal, they're getting the benefit of a quick ship situation in the context of our current environment where supply chains are backed up and you're waiting 3 or 4 months for a new piece of furniture. You receive these pieces in 7 to 10 days, and at the same time, you're doing good. So it's really a win-win for everyone involved.
Amazing.
It really is. So, Chris, thank you so much for that. We're running out of time here. Where do people get in touch with you who want to be an intentional activist or intentionally really fix and learn more about how they can have a decent, big item return process that doesn't cost them an arm and leg, save them some money, make them, more environmentally friendly as well?
Yeah. So, we have a great resource section on FloorFound.com. We'd love to talk to folks interested in learning more about what we're doing, but I would also encourage viewers to go and check out what brands like Inside Weather and Floyd and Feather and Sabai and others are doing that are our clients. They're really leading the way in terms of thought leadership in this space, and we're really proud to be a part of that.
Awesome,
Excellent.
Chris. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really, really appreciate it. And
Thank you all. Thanks for having me.
Just what
Thanks,
an
Chris.
awesome concept. I never would have ever guessed about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's when you think about returns, you think about the difficulty and obviously the reverse logistics is not the easiest thing in the world, and it costs money. And I've had the experience. I don't know if you have, but you get something, it's not the right. There's something wrong with it, or it's not the right one you ordered. Many times, especially over the last year, they just said, "Well, keep it. We'll just send you another one." There's like they don't even care what you do.
What do I do with two couches?
A lot of that stuff's just going into the landfills and stuff. So the environmental impact of e-commerce is big as it grows. But anyways, let's get to our next guest here. The always insightful, our Detroit bureau chief, Alan Adler's got some things to talk about here. We're talking about renewable gas and alternative energy and how it's intentional activism is what's going on here. Alan, how are you today, my friend?
Hey, I'm great. Good to see you guys, and thank you for letting me carry on last week's Net Zero Carbon Summit today.
Oh yeah,
it's so funny because this is where we netted out in Truck Talk last Friday, and it seems like there's something going on right now, and I don't know if you'd call it a diversion or an anomaly or what you'd call it, but there's a lot of attention all of a sudden on renewable natural gas and on sort of the drop-in fuels. All we've been talking about for months and months has been the electrification of the trucking industry, starting with medium duty,
Right.
especially, and that's continuing. But there's something else going on here, and Mike, you asked, what do you want to talk about? I think this is worth chatting about.
Yeah, I think it is too. So let's talk about this. What is there? I've talked to different people within the energy process, and so have you. Obviously, you're talking about it all the time. But those who are in petrol, petrol and carbon-based gas and diesel, et cetera, see it as a partnership with electrification, well, for forever and ever. And others see it as this gap between the two, and then the RNG, et cetera, play is in there. So what is happening here?
Well, okay, I think we can probably agree this much. Traditional diesel is definitely, probably going to be less of a factor over time. We're still going to have a lot of diesel used. I think, one of the things that you're going to hear more about, we had an announcement from Love's last week. I can't help but notice your water bottle, Kaylee. And is that a cup there with Love's on it?
It is. It's a coffee cup,
Love's
my friend. Yeah.
Love's last week said that they're going to build a renewable diesel plant with Cargill out in Nebraska. There are not a lot of these plants in the country, but if you think about renewable diesel and you think about what it comes from, which is sort of gross animal fats and things like that, but unlike biodiesel, which is kind of capped at 20% in terms of the mix, you can go much higher with a renewable diesel. It feels like that's coming on as something that basically reduces the carbon intensity, and that's really where all these trucking companies are looking. They may or may not be in love with electric vehicles, but what they know they have to do is meet some of these standards that are coming. 2024 will be the first round, and then 2027 from an EPA perspective. So you've got a lot of things coming up, and they are going to mix and match and plug and play wherever they can to reduce that carbon intensity. So if they do that with fuels, with renewable diesel, with renewable natural gas, I think you'll see that in the interim. I think there's some people that believe that it could be sort of a true long-term play. It's not just a temporary thing. We're not all going to be driving electric vehicles, maybe not, but it's going to take a while to get to that point, and you're going to need some at minimum interim solutions to get you there. And so this embracing, I think we saw Amazon last week buying renewable natural gas from Clean Fuels, big contract there. So you've got a lot going on in this space. And I think that you're going to continue to see that even as you see more electrification news out there. So it's just not a single solution. Nobody ever really said it was, but it's not a single solution.
Alan, so if you're a trucking company and you've thrown all of your chips into preparing for this electrification, and now you're kind of dialing back and you're like, whoa, maybe we need to look at this RNG option in the meantime. Talk about profitability between those two. What is it going to take to kind of make the economics work with throwing both of your hats in the ring for both electrification and for RNG?
Well, natural gas is less expensive than diesel, for one thing. By the way, I'm not buying or selling on this one, but I would tell you that it is less expensive. You've got less work to do. If you've either ordered, natural gas trucks, and some have for certain purposes, they're big in refuse hauling. They're big in some buses are big, and then also some regional haul. And you have been using, say, natural gas, fossil-based natural gas, and you switch to RNG. It's plentiful. There's a lot of it out there, so that's not a big deal. I think the TCO question, though, comes into how much is it going to cost me to make these changes, out to electric? And some are more committed than others, honestly. Not everybody thinks that's the right thing to do, but certainly when you look at California and the 15 states that are following it, they are stuck pretty heavily around battery electric vehicles, even though California has got enough renewable natural gas to fill 20% of the trucks that are on the roads out there. So wow. It's an interesting thing. I'm not sure, Kelly, that I can really answer just where it is, but I would say that, switching to a natural gas product ahead of, the 4 times the cost of electric truck versus a traditional diesel truck, certainly in the upfront, the acquisition cost, it's not even comparable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned cost and looking is a main driver, and I would suggest that that's probably it. You follow the money to most everything, and it's really Occam's razor to most questions is follow the money, right? Where's the money coming from? So from that perspective, Alan, what's your thoughts on this as far as is it an infrastructure play trying to find out what's going to be the alternative fuel that's going to be the easiest or the most cost effective to build out that infrastructure at a Love's, at a TA, or whatever it happens to be, right? Or is it from a cost perspective from the manufacturer or trucks in energy density of that fuel, right? Because you've got both sides of those, right? What's your thoughts on that?
Right. Well, and you've got, it's a little bit. In a previous career, I dealt a lot in ethanol and corn-based ethanol, which of course that got blown up at one point because it became a food versus fuel issue.
Yeah.
Using the corn for food versus fuel, and so that's kind of gone away. But you have some similarities really with the with the natural gas, the renewable natural gas. You've got a decent infrastructure of natural gas stations out there now, public stations that are available. It's 700, I think, is the latest number I've heard. With some more coming on and that kind of thing. Running renewable natural gas is not any different. You can run it in the same pipelines and that kind of thing. And one of the comments that one of our guests on the summit last week made, which I thought was fascinating, is you've got 2,000 landfills in this country that are basically plumbed to be able to take the methane that would typically be burning off, and returning it to fuel. And when you do that, you get to that sort of mythical net zero or negative net zero number. But I think all of these things are coming into play. I don't think at the manufacturer end it's that big a deal. Now, the Cummins Westport joint venture, which makes all of the natural gas engines used in trucks, that joint venture is going away at the end of the year, but Cummins is going to still make those trucks. And one of the things I found fascinating last week, is that they have a 15-liter engine version of that truck, of the natural gas thing that they sell in China. Will they bring it here? And if they do, that opens up, much more of your long haul to natural gas than you have now.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting, very interesting. I wish we could continue this on forever and ever, and we'll have you back on again.
Oh,
yes, I
we do.
absolutely
Yes, we do.
It's very, very insightful, and it's amazing the quality of connection we have to your dojo there high in the Himalayas.
I know. You and Dooner call that my dojo. Have I explained what those are behind me to you guys? Have I explained this?
Not me.
Okay, those were acquired. We lived in China for a few years in the late 90s and early 2000s. And these panels, my wife found them in Shanghai where we lived, and I think they're cool. They make a great backdrop.
I think they're very cool. You need your dojo wrap around your head there, my friend.
It's definitely better than.
You listen to your buddy too much. I'm sorry, Kaylee. What?
I said it's better than what I was working with before we got back in the studio. So I'm just glad that I'm here.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I haven't been able to work out of my bedroom like Dooner. I think that's awesome. But
yeah, exactly.
Not all of us can be so fortunate. Alan, thank you so much. Keep up with him up on FreightWaves.com, and then catch Truck Talk as well, because it's some good stuff.
Every Friday, guys. Every Friday at 11 in the morning, right in your inbox. We want it to grow, and we need your help.
Subscribe.
We definitely will. Thank you so much, Alan. We'll catch up with you shortly, my friend. Be well.
All right, there we go.
Yeah, there we go. I mean, it's very interesting. You can go through the whole thing again. I mean, and one of the things that a lot of people are considering, but you don't hear a lot of talk about it, is the energy density of the fuel, right? It may be this great fuel that can do, but okay.
Where's that?
Yeah, how much?
How do you get it from point A to point B?
Well, how much you need to carry on that truck to actually get the power out of it is the question, right? But talk about power. We've got a quick another weather segment with
Nick Austin.
With Nick Austin.
Power and sustainability. Power and sustainability.
Yeah.
Well, earlier we talked about all that rain that's going to be drenching parts of, I'd say, the eastern half of the U.S. That's coming up over the next few days. But total opposite story in the desert Southwest, other areas of the plains. It is bone dry, and the drought in a lot of these areas has just been getting worse and worse over the past 8 to 12 months. So that's what we're going to focus on right now. which is not as huge a deal for drivers as running into torrential rain and possible severe thunderstorms. But smoke from fires, these wildfires, sometimes does close down highways. It's happened before, even if it's just secondary roads. So we'll go to Sonar Critical Events. I'll show you where those problem spots are. Just one quick note, though, about the heavy rain that will be hitting some parts of the plains, as well as other areas into the Great Lakes, the southeast and northeast over the next few days. Flood watches issued now from the Weather Service for many areas of Oklahoma, including the Oklahoma City metro area and down into northeastern Texas. I wouldn't doubt that the Weather Service will end up issuing more flood or flash flood watches in other areas over the next few days. But back here, across these areas that are shaded here in the yellow, from parts of southern Colorado and Kansas down into the Oklahoma Panhandle, western Texas, parts of New Mexico as well, those are all under pretty elevated fire danger weather now. So not only because the ground is so dry and the air is so dry, but those are areas the rest of today where the high winds could spread some fires out of control, those fires that are already out there, with gusts in some spots up to 40, 50, maybe even a little more than 50 miles per hour through the rest of today. Across the rest of the desert Southwest, the winds aren't so bad in the Four Corners region, but it's still so dry because of the drought. There are a lot of fires out there. If the winds kick up later this week, that'll cause issues. And just really no rain in sight, at least not enough to make any kind of headway as far as that drought. So that's just something drivers should look out for across those regions, because it has happened before where the smoke could get so thick, if it's being blown across interstates or other major highways, they may run into just some spotty closures here and there, some temporary delays with that.
There you go. All the rain is headed to us.
Absolutely.
All the rain is coming this way.
Thank you so much, Nick, for that update. We'll catch up with him again very, very soon. Thank you, my friend.
You know what else is heading to us here at FreightWaves? It's another virtual event.
It is.
We've got Drone Waves hitting your airwaves on Friday, April 30th.
We do. That's this Friday.
That's this
Drone
Friday.
Waves.
That's this
yeah,
Friday.
Drone Waves is going to be awesome. Drone Waves are completely revolutionizing the first and last miles of the supply chain, and probably in between eventually. Hear from drone manufacturers, shippers, and more that are utilizing these devices, and learn what the future could hold. Hey, it's free to register.
It is.
Get in there, register right now.
Are we giving away a drone?
I don't know.
I don't know. That would be that.
We are
giving away a drone.
There you go. Well, you have it here.
If that information didn't encourage you to register, maybe the drone.
I'm going to register right now. I want the drone. Oh, I'm not qualified.
You're not qualified.
Or I don't qualify. I am qualified. I don't So listen. So tomorrow we've got extraterrestrial drones
on What the Truck.
On What the Truck, right? So tomorrow we've got Joshua Ravitch, NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory mechanical engineering lead on the Mars Ingenuity helicopter, which I don't know if you know this, but they've flown a helicopter 3 times on Mars over the last week and a half.
Which is mind-blowing for me. Absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think the last one he went like 5 meters in the air and then 50 meters away and came back with it. And they're going to have more. They've got some still photographs from it, and they've got some video that we haven't gotten back yet, because a lot of data bandwidth coming from Mars, right? Getting video back is not the easiest thing.
I've got to imagine that upload speed is not super great.
Yeah, but that's tomorrow noon on What the Truck. We also have Craig Nickel, who is NASA Armstrong Flight Research Center, low boom flight demonstrator, project manager, in charge of the X-59. Omar Singh, founder and president of Surge Transportation. Jennifer Miller, senior director operations at DHL Supply Chain as well. And I don't know if you saw yesterday's where we had Stephanie Stuckey on.
Oh yeah. And like I said, you guys missed such a great opportunity to make it What the Stuckey.
What the Stuckey,
such a great
yeah,
opportunity.
Dooner, if you're watching, we missed it. We should have called it What the Stuckey.
But it was good. It was a good show.
It was a great show, talking about car trips and what your favorite trip was, and Stuckey's comeback. Plus, we also had J.J. Keller, Rick Malcho from J.J. Keller, and also Brian Barrow, who is talking about chief kindness officers, which was very interesting. So check that out, freightwaves.com or wherever you get your podcast. You can check that out. It's awesome. And I guess we'll see everybody on Thursday. Is that right?
And in that meantime, go register for Drone Waves. It's going to be awesome.
Do it right away. Peace and love, everyone.